The first thing you should know is that the concert was a disaster. Not musically, God, no. The audience erupted in applause so thunderous it rattled the chandeliers. But for me, standing there with my violin bow trembling, it felt like the walls were closing in. Because while everyone else saw perfection, I saw him. And seeing him again after everything, it was like dragging open an old wound with my bare hands. Ethan Hale, the celebrated young conductor of the New York Philharmonic, raised his baton that night as though he were summoning heaven itself. And maybe he did, because every note we played bent toward him like iron to a magnet. The tragedy? He used to be mine. The cruel joke of the universe was that I never wanted to see him again, not after how we tore each other apart. Yet here we were, bound by music, chained to the same stage, pretending we were nothing more than colleagues. But the way his eyes burned when they found mine, the tiny tremor in his hand that only I could see, I knew we were both lying. Music has a way of exposing the truth. And the truth was I still loved him. The rehearsal before the concert should have warned me. Ethan was relentless, demanding, his voice slicing through the hall with precision. Again, he snapped when my section missed a cue. Again. And then, softer, almost imperceptible, when he caught my gaze lingering too long. Again, Daniel. My name on his lips, God. It was enough to unravel me. He was supposed to be just my conductor now, nothing more. But it didn't feel that way. It felt personal, charged, dangerous. The orchestra could sense it too, a current sparking between us, and though no one said a word, I could feel their eyes flicking back and forth. The night of the performance, my bow quivered against the strings. Every note I played carried a secret. Every glance we stole hummed with history. And when the final crescendo crashed into silence, I could barely breathe. Then came the applause. Deafening, overwhelming. The crowd leapt to their feet. I bowed, dazed. And when I rose, Ethan's eyes locked with mine. For one fleeting moment, the entire world dissolved. And that's when the child appeared. A little boy, no more than 6, was ushered backstage by a frantic woman. He clutched a folded piece of sheet music, his tiny hands smudged with graphite. He looked terrified, lost, and when his wide eyes found Ethan, something shifted in the air. Ethan froze, baton slipping slightly in his grip. The boy's gaze flicked to me then, and the strangest thing happened. His expression softened, almost relieved, as though he'd found something familiar in me. I didn't understand it then, but I would. God help me, I would. After the concert, chaos unfolded backstage. Flowers, congratulations, reporters clamoring for interviews. Ethan disappeared into the dressing room, as he always did, shielded by assistants and security. I should have left. I should have escaped before the past came roaring back. Instead, I lingered, and that's when the boy approached me. Alone now, without the woman who had ushered him in. His eyes were impossibly blue. Ethan's eyes. My chest tightened. "You're Daniel, right?" he asked softly, voice trembling. "Yes," I said, kneeling down to meet his gaze. "And who are you?" He hesitated, then held out the crumpled sheet music. My breath caught when I saw the handwriting scrawled across the margins. Ethan's handwriting. "My name is Lucas," he whispered. I think you know my dad." The world tilted beneath my feet. My pulse thundered in my ears. Lucas, Ethan's son. But Ethan had no sonar, so I thought. I stumbled back, clutching the sheet music like it was a lifeline. Memories rushed in Ethan's promises, his betrayals, the nights we spent tangled in music and in each other, the break that nearly destroyed me. And now this boy, standing before me like the embodiment of every unanswered question. Before I could speak, Ethan appeared. His eyes flicked between me and Lucas, and in that instant, I saw it. The truth he'd been hiding. His carefully crafted mask slipped, just for a second, and I realized something with brutal clarity. The man I had loved, the man who shattered Mayhay, wasn't just a conductor anymore. He was a father, and somehow, that truth bound us tighter than ever before. The silence between us was heavier than the ovation still echoing in the hall. Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. His usually unshakable composure cracked as his gaze darted from me to the boy. He looked like a man caught standing naked under a spotlight, his secrets exposed in the most merciless way possible. Lucas, oblivious to the storm building between us, held out his tiny hand toward Ethan. "Dad, you forgot this." His voice trembled with innocence, but the word "Dad" sliced through me like a blade. Ethan stiffened, swallowing hard, before taking the sheet music. "Thank you, Lucas," he said quietly, his voice stripped of its usual authority. Then his eyes flicked to me, sharp, desperate. "Daniel, we need to talk." I almost laughed. The audacity of it. Years of silence, of unresolved wounds, and now he had a son I never knew existed and he wanted to talk? "No," I said, though the word came out hoarse, betraying the way my chest ached. "You need to explain." The corridor backstage felt too narrow, too suffocating. Musicians brushed past us. Assistants barked into walkie-talkies. But for me, the world shrank down to the three of us. Me, him, and the boy. Lucas tilted his head, sensing the tension though he didn't understand it. He slipped his small hand into Ethan's, grounding him in a way that made my heart clench. Ethan squeezed back, protective, tender qualities I once believed were mine alone to draw out of him. Couldn't watch it, not without breaking. So I turned, forcing my legs to move, violin case digging into my palm. But before I could escape, Ethan's voice caught me like a hook. "Don't walk away, Daniel. Not again. Not again." The words stopped me cold. We ended up in his dressing room, the three of us. Lucas sat in a chair too big for him, legs swinging, clutching his music as if it were armor. I stood rigid near the door, ready to bolt. Ethan hovered by the vanity, shoulders tense, hands pressed flat against the counter like he needed it to stay upright. "Say something," I demanded. His eyes lifted, meeting mine, and for the first time in years, I saw not the brilliant conductor, not the public icon, but the man who used to hold me under New York's midnight skies. "He's mine," Ethan said simply. The words landed like thunder. I staggered back. "How? When?" My throat burned. "Jesus, Ethan, I stopped, the memory too sharp. We were everything, and you never told me." "I didn't know," he admitted, voice cracking. "Not until 2 years ago." His mother, he hesitated, as if saying her name would fracture the fragile space between us. "She never told me, not until she was sick. By the time I found out, she was gone. And Lucas was." His gaze softened, flicking toward the boy. "He was mine to protect." Lucas looked up at him with trust so pure it hurt to see. I should have felt compassion. Instead, I felt fury. Fury at the betrayal, at the secrecy, at the years lost to silence while he built a life that excluded me. "You should have told me," I said, voice shaking. "I deserved to know." "You're right," Ethan whispered. "But I was terrified. I didn't want you to see me as a failure, as someone who couldn't even hold his own life together. And I thought if I told you, it would only rip us further apart." A bitter laugh escaped me, as if we weren't already ripped apart. Lucas's wide eyes darted between us, confusion settling on his small face. I hated that he was caught in the crossfire of our past. He deserved better than this storm. I crouched down to his level, softening my tone. "Hey, Lucas, do you like music?" His face lit up, all tension forgotten. "I love it. Daddy teaches me piano. I want to play like him. Or like you." His smile was tentative, shy, but it cracked something inside me wide open. I looked up at Ethan, my voice steady but low. "You hid him from me, but now he's here, and I don't know what that means for us." The unspoken truth hung heavy in the room. We were no longer just two men haunted by what we'd lost. There was a child now, and he changed everything. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of rehearsals and tension. Ethan and I danced around each other like strangers forced into the same orbit. Every rehearsal carried unspoken conversations, every performance layered with ghosts of the past. Lucas became an unexpected bridge between us. He'd sit in the rehearsal hall sometimes, sketching in a notebook while we worked. Between breaks, he'd run to me, asking to see my violin, eyes sparkling with wonder. One afternoon, he tugged on my sleeve. "Can you teach me something?" I hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who watched silently from the podium. His face was unreadable. But when I placed the violin gently into Lucas's hands, guiding his tiny fingers along the strings, I saw Ethan's expression shift. His walls crumbled, just a little, revealing something raw, almost hopeful. Lucas drew the bow across the strings, producing a sound so scratchy it made him giggle. The sound echoed through the hall, not music exactly, but something more precious. Life, continuity. I laughed too, despite myself. And in that moment, with Ethan watching us, something fragile and tentative began to stitch itself back together. But it wasn't simple. It never would be. One night, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, I found Ethan alone in the empty concert hall. He stood at the podium, baton lowered, staring out at the rows of vacant seats like they held all the answers he couldn't reach. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly, stepping into the hush of the hall. His shoulders tensed. "Regret what?" "Us," I said. "The way it ended. The way we burned down everything we built." He turned, eyes dark, haunted. "Every damn day." The words hit me harder than I expected. "I regret the way I left you," he continued. "I regret the silence. But I don't regret loving you, Daniel. I never could." For a moment, the air between us was electric, charged with everything we'd never said. My chest ached with longing and anger all at once. But then I thought of Lucas, of his laughter, his trust, the way he looked at Ethan like he was the entire world. "We're not the same people anymore," I said, my voice breaking. "And now there's him. He deserves better than the wreckage we left behind." Ethan stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe he deserves to see us try again." My heart thundered, because for the first time I wanted to believe him. That night I couldn't sleep. The city roared outside my apartment window, restless and unyielding. I sat with my violin, bow poised, but no music came. Only memories. Ethan's laughter, the warmth of his arms, the devastation of his absence. And now the possibility dangerous, fragile leaf something new. Was it foolish to even consider it? Could two men who had destroyed each other once really build something strong enough to hold not just them, but a child too? I didn't know. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Lucas's smile, and I knew I had to try. The truth never comes all at once. It seeps in through cracks, fragments, hints that gnaw at the edges of certainty until the whole foundation threatens to collapse. For me, that crack appeared one chilly November evening, just after rehearsal. Lucas had fallen asleep in one of the velvet chairs in the hall, his little chest rising and falling with the innocence of dreams. Ethan draped his coat over him, his movements so tender they made my throat ache. I lingered near the stage, packing my violin, trying to ignore the weight of everything between us. But then I noticed something in an envelope peeking out of Ethan's bag, marked with handwriting I didn't recognize. He caught me staring. "What?" he asked too quickly. I shook my head, but my chest tightened. Secrets again. Always secrets. "Who wrote that?" I pressed. His jaw clenched. "It doesn't matter." "Don't you dare!" I snapped, louder than I intended. The sound echoed in the empty hall, startling even him. "Don't you dare tell me what does and doesn't matter. Not when you've already hidden so much." Lucas stirred in his sleep. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Ethan spoke. His voice was low, resigned. "It was from her, Lucas's mother, before she died." The room tilted. "What does it say?" He hesitated. "Too long." "Ethan." His shoulders slumped. He pulled the envelope free, fingers trembling as he handed it to me. "You deserve to know." The letter was brief, written in hurried strokes that betrayed a woman racing against time. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I'm sorry I never told you sooner. Lucas is yours. I wanted to protect him, but I realize now that was selfish. He deserves his father. He deserves the truth. And there's something else, something I couldn't explain to him yet. You'll understand when the time comes. Please love him enough for the both of us. I read it 3 times before lowering the paper. My hands shook. The words burned. Protect him from what? I whispered. Ethan's eyes flicked to the sleeping boy, then back to me. His silence was answer enough. He didn't know. Or maybe he did and he wasn't ready to say. Anger and sorrow warred inside me. I wanted to scream, to demand more, to drag every secret out into the light. But Lucas stirred again, his small body curling deeper into the chair. His innocence held me back. I folded the letter, pressing it against my chest. You can't do this alone, Ethan. Whatever this is, whatever she meant, you can't keep shutting me out. His gaze softened, torn between pride and desperation. And what if I let you in, Daniel? What if I let you close again, only to destroy us both a second time? The pain in his voice cut deep. But I didn't flinch. Then at least it won't be built on lies. The days that followed carried a strange shift. Ethan and I still fought, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, but beneath it was an undercurrent neither of us could deny. We had stepped too close to the edge to go back. Lucas, in his unassuming way, drew us together. He started joining me before rehearsals, perched beside me with wide eyes as I tuned my violin. Sometimes he'd hum along, his small voice wobbly but determined. Other times, he'd ask questions about my past, my music, even my favorite color, as though stitching me into the fabric of his world piece by piece. One evening, while Ethan was caught in a meeting with the board, Lucas tugged on my sleeve. Will you walk me home? I hesitated. Shouldn't we wait for your dad? He shook his head. He said you could. His trust was absolute, disarming. So we walked. The New York streets glittered with early holiday lights, the air sharp with winter. Lucas skipped ahead, his laughter ringing through the night. For a moment, it was easy to forget the shadows lurking behind us. Halfway to Ethan's apartment, Lucas slowed, his hand slipping into mine. Do you think Daddy's lonely? The question pierced me. Why do you ask? Sometimes he looks sad when he thinks I'm not watching, Lucas said softly, like he's missing something. He glanced up at me, eyes shining with something far too wise for his age. Or someone. I swallowed hard. Maybe he is. Do you miss him too? The honesty of the child's gaze nearly undid me. Every day, I admitted. Lucas smiled, small and knowing, and squeezed my hand. Later that night, Ethan returned to find Lucas curled up asleep on the couch, my jacket draped over him. I stood by the window staring out at the city. You shouldn't have had to do this, Ethan said quietly, though his tone carried no accusation. I didn't mind, I replied. He's incredible, Ethan. You should know that. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me, searching. And what about me? What am I to you now? The question hung in the air, raw and dangerous. I turned, meeting his gaze. You're the man who broke me, and the man I can't stop loving, even when I should. His breath caught. For a moment, the space between us felt electric again, charged with everything unsaid. But then Lucas stirred, mumbling in his sleep, and the spell broke. Ethan tore his gaze away. We can't do this here. Not like this. I nodded, though the ache in my chest was unbearable. The breaking point came a week later. We were in rehearsal when Lucas suddenly fainted. One moment he was scribbling in his notebook in the front row. The next he collapsed onto the floor, pale and trembling. Chaos erupted. Musicians shouted. Chairs scraped. Someone called 911. Ethan dropped his baton and was at his son's side in seconds. Panic etched into every line of his face. I froze, heart hammering, before rushing to join him. Together we knelt beside Lucas, who was barely conscious, whispering weakly for his father. The ambulance ride was a blur. At the hospital, sterile white walls closed in as doctors ran tests. Nurses moved briskly, and Ethan clung to Lucas's hand as though letting go would mean losing him forever. Hours passed before a doctor finally emerged. His expression was grave. "Mr. Hale," he said, glancing between Ethan and me, "your son has a congenital heart condition. Serious. He's going to need surgery." The floor fell away beneath us. Ethan's face went white, his grip tightening on Lucas's hand. I felt my own chest cave in. All the secrets, all the lies, all the years we'd wasted, they meant nothing now compared to the fragile rise and fall of that small chest on the hospital bed. And in that moment, clarity struck me with brutal force. This wasn't just Ethan's fight. It was mine too. I wasn't going to walk away this time. Not from Ethan. Not from Lucas. Not from the family we had never meant to build, but somehow had anyway. Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Not the comforting hush of a concert hall waiting for music, but a heavy, suffocating quiet that presses on your chest and makes every tick of the clock feel like a countdown. Ethan and I sat side by side outside the operating room, our hands clenched, our eyes fixed on the double doors that had swallowed Lucas. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Words seemed too fragile, too breakable against the reality of what was happening inside. Finally, Ethan's voice cracked the silence. "When he first came to me," he said softly, "I didn't know if I could do it, be a father. I was drowning in concerts, tours, critics breathing down my neck. But then Lucas looked at me, and it was like," his voice faltered, "it was like the world gave me one last chance to get something right. I turned to him, seeing him not as the conductor, not as the man who once broke me, but as a father stripped bare of everything except love and fear. You did get something right," I whispered. "You gave him love. That's more than enough." His eyes met mine, glassy with unshed tears. "And you? After everything I've done, after all the ways I hurt you, why are you still here, Daniel?" I hesitated, but the answer came from somewhere deeper than thought. "Because I still love you. And because I love him, too." The confession hung in the sterile air between us, terrifying and liberating all at once. Ethan's breath shuddered. He reached for my hand hesitant, unsure, and for the first time in years, I didn't pull away. The hours stretched into eternity. Every time the doors swung open, my heart leapt, only to crash again when it wasn't the surgeon. Ethan paced, ran his hands through his hair, muttered prayers I'd never heard from him before. I sat rigid, violin case still at my side like a talisman, as though the music could protect him. At last, the doctor emerged. Ethan and I surged to our feet, fear etched in every line of our faces. "The surgery went well," the doctor said, his voice steady. Relief washed over me so fierce it nearly knocked me to my knees. "Lucas is stable. He'll need time and careful monitoring, but he's strong. He'll recover." Ethan's shoulders collapsed as if a mountain had been lifted from them. He pressed his hands over his face, trembling with the weight of it. I reached out, steadying him, and for the first time in years he let me. Seeing Lucas afterward was like seeing the sun break through a storm. Pale, tired, but smiling faintly when he saw us. "Hey, buddy," Ethan whispered, brushing hair from his forehead. "Daddy," Lucas murmured, then turned his gaze to me. "Daniel." I swallowed hard, moving closer. "You scared us," I said, trying to smile. "Sorry," he whispered, eyes heavy but playful. "But you'll stay, right? Both of you." Ethan looked at me then, not with the pride of a conductor or the arrogance of a man who thought he could control everything, but with the vulnerability of someone begging for a second chance. I took Lucas's small hand in mine, then looked at Ethan. "Yes, I'll stay." Recovery was slow, but it became our rhythm. Days blurred into weeks of hospital visits, checkups, quiet nights with storybooks and whispered lullabies. I taught Lucas simple songs on the violin, his tiny fingers clumsy but determined. Ethan would sit beside us, sometimes adding soft chords on the piano, and for the first time, music wasn't about perfection or performance. It was about us. One evening, after Lucas had drifted to sleep, Ethan and I found ourselves alone in his apartment. The city glowed through the window, but inside the room was hushed, intimate. "You've been more of a father to him these past weeks than I ever dreamed you'd be," Ethan said softly. He looks at you like he's known you his whole life. I smiled faintly. Maybe because he sees what I feel, that I'd do anything for him. For both of you. Ethan's eyes darkened, filled with something unspoken. He stepped closer. Daniel, I can't promise I won't screw up again. I'm still learning how to be everything he needs. Everything you need. My breath caught. The air between us hummed like a string drawn too tight. Then let's learn together, I said. The kiss, when it came, was slow, tentative at first, then fierce with years of longing. It wasn't the reckless fire of our youth, it was something deeper, tempered by pain, strengthened by survival. Promise, not just passion. Spring arrived. Lucas's strength returned little by little. He laughed more, played more, filled the apartment with sketches and music and endless questions. He became the heart of everything, the quiet glue stitching Ethan and me back together. One Saturday, we took him to Central Park. He ran ahead, chasing pigeons, his laughter ringing through the crisp air. Ethan and I walked behind, shoulders brushing, silence comfortable. Remember when we thought music was everything? I said, watching Lucas twirl with arms outstretched. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Turns out, music was just the beginning. I glanced at him, and for once, there was no bitterness, no regret, only love. Lucas ran back, clutching our hands in his small ones. Let's go home, he said brightly. And just like that, the word home meant something it never had before. The concert hall would always be part of our story, the stage where we broke, the stage where we began again. Months later, when Ethan lifted his baton and I raised my bow, it wasn't just music we played. It was survival, forgiveness, love. In the audience, Lucas sat proudly in the front row, clapping before the music even began. And as the first note soared through the hall, I realized something simple, something undeniable. We weren't just fragments of a broken past. We were a family, a conductor, a violinist, and a child who changed everything. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.